Hello and welcome to the Spotlight on Student Life series, a part of New Student Orientation 2020, brought to you by the Office of Graduate Student Life and Development. This panel is on the experiences of student parents and caregivers at TC. We want to thank all of our panelists for joining us and sharing a bit about their experiences at Teachers College. Let's go ahead and kick things off by introducing our moderator for this panel, Carol, who will tell us a little bit about themselves and then introduce our panelists. Take it away, Carol.
Hi, everyone. Such a pleasure to be here with you and among this community of parents and caregivers at TC. I'll just start by introducing myself very shortly. I am currently a student in the Adult Learning and Leadership program. This is my second program at TC, and I am very happy to be part of this community. And of course, I hope that this afternoon, my colleagues, Kate, Katie, and Shell can also be very informative about what's coming next to everyone who's coming to TC next semester. So I also have two kids. I have one 16-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son. We are all from Brazil. We moved to New York for the program, for my first program, and we've been living there for 2 years now. How about you? Maybe Shell has a little similar experience to me, right, Shell? Would you like to get started?
Sure. So I'm Shell. I am a doctoral fellow and a Zenkel fellow, and I'm in my second year in the dance education doctoral in education program. And I moved here from Tennessee. So, and I'm a full-time student, so hopefully I have another 2 years of coursework, and then I'll be working on my dissertation. And I have two kids. I have two teenagers, a 17-year-old Bella and a 14-year-old Elio, and they are both going to be attending the same high school this year, although last year one of my son Elio attended a middle school, so he's switching schools. So that's me.
He must be very thrilled. Katie, would you like to go next?
Sure. Yes, so I'm Katie. I am also a second-year doctoral student. I'm in the English education program, and my family moved most recently from North Carolina to New York City a year ago when we moved for me to begin the program in English Ed. And I have two children. They're twins, and they're 6 years old, a son and a daughter.
And Kate.
Hi, I'm Kate. You're gonna have to forgive me. I have a very noisy baby right now who's very excited about socks. I am a third year going on 4-year student, PhD student in the cognitive science program in the human development department at Teachers College, where I'm studying collaborative learning. And I have one kid. This is her. Her name's Cassidy. She loves Zoom meetings. They're like her favorite thing.
And you're
like
always happy to yes, and the next question would be, what made you decide to attend TC? Would you like to continue, Kate?
Yeah, I was a teacher before coming here. I taught for 10 years, and I was a specialist in special education. So I was really interested in how students learned, particularly as interested in learning how they learn from each other. Also interested in non-neurotypical learning. Sorry. So Teachers College made sense because I'd spent the majority of my career in New York. Hold on. And I applied to a few other schools, but my ultimate decision was made because Teachers College had a really nice program that I enjoyed, and because my partner also got a job in the area, which I think plays a huge part in anybody's choice about where they end up going to graduate school. Like if you have a partner, where can your partner and your family also be comfortable? So I think that played a big factor in why I chose Teachers College.
Yeah, makes total sense to me. How about you, Katie?
Sure. Well, kind of like Kate, I was a teacher before I came, and I think I've known about Teachers College since I was in teacher education myself, like 20 years ago. English language arts has always kind of been my thing, and I've always known about Teachers College and what they've been doing. And I guess it was 3 years ago, I was visiting the city, considering doctoral programs, and visited Teachers College just while I happened to be in town. And while I was visiting, there was a conference happening, a summer conference, the Reimagining Summer Institute on Racial Justice and Education. And that was really up my alley. So I wrote a grant to be able to attend that conference the following summer, which was 2 years ago, and met some people. I just found it to be a really warm place. And similar to Kate, I applied to several local schools in North Carolina. And ultimately, my family just saw the opportunity of being in New York City and studying at Teachers College as something that we couldn't say no to, and have no regrets about that decision, even in the midst of a pandemic and how that's affected the school and the city. It was the right call for us. So that's really what got me in the door.
Yeah. And how about you, Shel?
So full disclosure, I'm 48 years old, so I'm definitely pursuing this degree later on in in my life, I guess. But and so I actually started out as a performer. I would say, I'd like to say I had a career as a professional dancer, but I could also just say I was a starving artist for too long. So yeah, my career path took me to California in the beginning, where I had a company. But eventually in my 30s, I went and got my master's, and then started teaching public high school, and went on to teach university, developing a dance education program at the first standalone dance major program in Tennessee. And I was doing a whole lot of advocacy work and statewide dance education work. And so for me, Teachers College is actually the only university that has a doctoral in education in dance education program in the country, I think in the world. So it's a very unique program. I joined in the second year of the program's existence, so it's quite new. But I considered going to get my PhD in other places, but I knew that there was nothing that was what I was looking for. So when this program opened up, I applied in the second year because there was just nothing like it. And then being offered a fellowship made it a possibility for me, because there's no way I could do it without, I'm a single mom, so without some financial assistance, there's no way I could have moved to New York City. So yeah, the program is very unique, and you know, now that I've been in it for a year, I can say that it's everything that it advertised to be and more. It's been a very unique experience for me compared to my other educational experiences. I like to say I feel like I finally came home. The director of my program is just amazing. So like Katie, even amidst a pandemic, I have absolutely no regrets, and I'm super excited about the next couple of years.
That is good to know. So I am 43 years old, not much younger than you, and I had finished my bachelor's degree in business administration 20 years ago. And there was an urge for me to go back to school and to getting, more specialized as I went into the education-related world through the teaching of languages, of foreign languages. So I became passionate about it. At some point, I decided this is what I love to do, and I know this is something that feels like a call, and I should like really learn more about it. So I found this program at TC, and I actually couldn't find it elsewhere. It is related to private schools, so leadership in private schools. It's the Klingenstein Center. And it was totally mission driven. So one of the things that made me really love DC through the Klingenstein Center is that there is such an urge at DC for social justice, and the feeling of inclusion and all that, and what usually people perceive as private education is probably the opposite of it. But not my reality, because I'm from Brazil and I really live in a very little developed place, region in Brazil, so really underdeveloped, underserved in all concerns. So the fact that I am in private education doesn't mean elite education. It means serving people whom the public system hasn't been serving so far, with a degree of freedom. I love to see this is what made me come first, and what made me stay was the fact that there's so much to learn, there's so much to enjoy, and I would then bring it back to what our talk today is about. And I guess that one of the things that made me stay at DC is the experience for my whole family. So the fact that I don't know, Shal, if you feel the same, but for teenagers, it's such great opportunity to get to know that they can also, feel this intellectual pleasure in this world where everything is so probably calling the teenagers to a less intellectual life. So I see being in there as an opportunity also for education, like indirect education for my children. So yes, it's been great. And my next question to us is, do you live on or off campus? And how did you make that decision about living? If you live off campus, what was the process of finding a place to live? I know that Kate and Shell live on campus just like me, right? I'm not sure about Katie.
I live on campus. In fact, Shell lives across the hall from us.
Oh, great.
Yep.
Does everyone live in Bancroft?
No, I live in the Grant.
Okay, Katie and Kate live in Grant, and Shell and I live in Bancroft, right?
Katie's my neighbor, so we're in Bank. All three of us are in Bancroft, and then Kate.
Oh, I got it. Great. Okay, yes, I lived in Grant too, Kate. My first semester I lived there, but it was a 1-bedroom apartment, and it was a little too tiny for 4 grown people. And does anyone have any experience in like finding a place to live off campus? I don't have any.
I've had some. Go ahead, sorry. I was just going to say that I've lived in New York for 12 years, and so I have probably lived in 6 different apartments in that time. So, typical New Yorker sort of migrantly moving from apartment to apartment due to rent increases or job changes. Yeah, but that experience, I think a lot has changed in the city since I was doing that. That was something I lived in New York about 4 years ago, and I think a lot has changed since then. I use Craigslist to find my apartments, and that was wonderful. But you need practice to be able to figure out how to use that, and I don't think that's what people are currently using.
Yeah, well,
I
good
can
to know.
sorry, were you done, Kate? I didn't mean to interrupt. I can add a little bit to what's happening now. We were considering moving off campus. And I will say that we chose to move to live on campus because we were already overwhelmed with the decision to move to New York City anyway, and we were downsizing our home and leaving behind family and jobs and all of that. And so it felt like a non-decision to say that we could be on campus. And with the pandemic, we were curious about living off campus, I think partly just because we've been in this little space 24/7 for so long. And so we were looking at apartments, and I will say there is a lot that seems to be coming available, and that's maybe not going quite as quickly. But ultimately it's still an unknown factor. I don't know in 6 months what life will look like, and I don't know what I would want to have in a space I'm living in. If we're on lockdown again, or if we need to be close to something, we are committed to our children's school around the corner. So ultimately we decided the best thing to do was to stay. But I will say, like, Street Easy is showing a lot of available apartments. They're like comparably or slightly higher price, I think, than what we're paying here. So ultimately decided to stay. But that's kind of what we went through for a few weeks when we were considering leaving.
I think this is very helpful and fresh information for the ones who are planning to come soon to New York. Yeah, to me, it's because I'm an international student, one thing that plays a big role is the credit. We don't have credit in the United States. So for us to rent a place means that we would have, possibly we would have, in most of the cases, to pay 14 months of rent in advance, which means for 1 year, the 12 months plus one like security deposit, and plus one for the fee, for the realtor fee, something like that. So this is just too much money to give ahead of anything at any time, and especially considering now our situation as international students. Well, now it seems that it's been solved, but I don't know, it might change at any point. So the fact that we are in living on campus, though that our living situation is also related to what brought us to the US, which is TC, it makes total sense that we have their support in that situation too, because the feeling of vulnerability when you're a foreigner coming to a country for the first time is huge. And just that TC gives us this option of living on campus also as a family, it was probably also one of the things that made me say yes to the admission, because I knew that, you know, we wouldn't be just lose as people in terms of belonging and feeling the support. So this is what made us decide on that. And now, very lately, there is this new group of parents and caregivers, which we all belong to somehow, either as signatories and leaders or as members. That includes me. And I would ask maybe a volunteer in the group to talk more about how this happened in the past months during the pandemic, that we became like stronger as a community of parents and caregivers. Anyone volunteering to talk about that?
Can I just, before you go on past the apartments, I just wanted to add one little tidbit that might be useful, because when I was choosing to move into these apartments, I have a lot of friends that live in the city, and some of the things to factor in are that we have a laundry facility in our buildings, which is not always common in apartments. Sometimes they are in the buildings, but sometimes they're not. And that our Wi-Fi is included, which is actually a big additional expense. Actually, our utilities and our Wi-Fi. So with the rent, you're actually covering a lot. And also I was told that to rent an apartment in the city, you usually need, and I don't know if you just said this, Carol, but you usually need 3 months worth of rent as collateral, basically. And there was no way I could have come up with that myself. So I just wanted to make sure to add those little things that kind of, those were part of the determining factor for me, because I realized how much less expensive it was with those things factored in, even though I think rent prices might go down because of the current situation. But
yeah, this is new to me. I didn't know. I thought that only international students or foreign people would have the situation of having to pay anything in advance. I would never anticipate that even Americans would have to do that. Yeah, and also there was a panel just like this for the residential services. So maybe the people who are watching this video now, if they want to have more information about that, there was a panel recorded just a couple of days ago, and because I was in that panel as well, I know it. So we've been talking about how interesting it is to at least apply and try to get housing from TC. It is great.
Can I just add one more thing about the housing? I'm sorry, this is just such an important topic. I also was coming in from out of state, and there's, just from my past experiences I mentioned, there's a lot of chaos in New York City around housing. There's paperwork, there's checking your credit, as you mentioned, there's these down payments, as Shell mentioned. So my partner and I decided that the TC housing really made that whole process a lot simpler. And it really helped us transition into living in the city. We weren't able to come into the city and shop around and look at different apartments. And one thing I don't think has changed since I was last apartment shopping is you really have to go and look at the apartment in New York City. Whatever platform you're viewing the pictures of the apartment on are, not going to give you as much information as an in-person visit. And if you're coming in from out of state or from outside of the country, it's really hard to take time to actually travel around and look at the apartments you want to live in. So that was the other reason we chose to just come into Teachers College housing. Thanks.
Yeah, good, very good. So talking about our group of parents and caregivers, and also the sense of community, how did we create that? How have we found it in the college at large? Would anyone like to volunteer to start this conversation?
I'm just going to volunteer Kate or Shell as signatories to talk about the student parent organization, and then I'll mute myself.
Do you want to start, Shell?
You can go ahead.
I am friends with a brilliant person, Liana Cabral. She did her doctoral research on families at Teachers College. And while, I haven't read a lot of her research, she and I talked a lot about it. And I was really struck by how difficult it is for students who are also parents at Teachers College for lots of reasons. There's no clear family leave policy. There's no office or place you can go to as a student parent to ask questions about how to enroll your kids in the New York City public school system, for example. And there are, there's sort of just understanding that if you're going to be giving birth, the way that you're going to be able to take time from your studies to give birth is to go on disability for a semester. And that struck me as surprising. Not that that's unusual in the United States. We have a really bad way of making sure parents are protected in this country and have healthcare, but I was just struck that Teachers College, which would invest so much in children and in education, had a bunch of these holes. So after talking to her, Leanna was willing to connect me with a few of the people that she had spoken with to sort of build the network of people that she eventually brought into her PhD research. So it was her work that actually helped me sort of start reaching out to other parents. And I think because of just who she was connected with and the fact that I'm a new parent, I ended up connecting with parents who have young kids, newborn up to about 2. And so that's wonderful. We have sort of a community of people who are really stressed out about birth and childcare and newborn information. But what was a real benefit to that organizing was that I met Shell, who is on the other end of that organizing, right? Shell mentioned that she has older kids in her family, and that kind of made the group into this larger or potentially larger group, because we can be a group of people who have a large number of a variety of ages in our children. So with that, I just wanted to pass over to Shell and ask you how you got involved in this.
So I don't know that we mentioned that we're talking about the Teachers College. It's student parent group, which is a group through the Graduate Student Life and Development. And we're currently organizing as a formed group, and a group actually existed in the past very similarly, but for me, when I came to school ahead of time, I was frustrated because I couldn't connect with any other parents to give me some insight into like the process of getting enrolled in school, finding healthcare providers, just some logistics. And so I really had to, and I'm sure Katie could talk about this too, but I had to figure things out myself. And I did. My experience as a graduate student was that I lived in university family housing, but our family housing was completely families. And so there were lots of opportunities for us to connect as a community. And it was a very international community. And I really loved it. So for me, I actually had been having conversations with some of the administrators at Teachers College about my concerns regarding messaging about what was going on during the COVID crisis with the families in apartments. And so I started to have conversations about this student group, and Kate and I had met earlier this year on numerous occasions. And so one is that I maneuvered the waters by myself, but I found actually in my program, almost everybody in my program, the majority of people actually have older children. And so I have this kind of community of parents of teens and even older, and some younger within my program. And that has been really valuable to me, especially because these people have, most of the people in my program are from New York and they've raised their kids here. So that's been really helpful. But then this new group, we're creating this group and we're hoping to get people involved. So hopefully parents watching this will reach out to the Graduate Student Life and Development and ask about it, or look for us on the website and get involved, because we're really hoping to create a resourceful community of families that can support one another and think about what are some resources maybe we need to help support us as we maneuver through the waters of academia.
I'm very excited about this group, truly. I was excited to meet Shell through the first meeting of this group, because I really didn't know anyone at TC who had teenagers at home. So I was really excited about that. Unfortunately, we haven't met in person yet because of the pandemic. We came to Brazil since March, so we're probably staying here a while until we are allowed to get back to the US, because right now we can't go even if we wanted to. But the situation for me was, it was really, I felt a lack of initiatives in that sense too. I felt really lost, because in my program, the first program I came for, which I just already said, in private school leadership, The ones who had kids had, really like babies not in school age at all. And other than that, so my situation was totally different from theirs, because it took so long for my visa to be released and approved. I only made it to arrive in New York 1 week before the fall semester began 2 years ago. So when we got there, to find a place in a public school was really traumatic, because I had one son that was about to enter middle school, 6th grade, and a daughter who was about to enter high school, 10th grade. It was impossible to find a school near TC at that point for them. So with the help of the director of my program, Professor Furlong, I was able to get, access to other schools in different neighborhoods. And right now my kids, they attend a school in the financial district area. So it means that they commute almost 1 hour every day to go to school, and then another 1 hour to be back to school. The fact that we went through all that without knowing other people who were going through that, or who, maybe tell us about their experience, made it also much more difficult. And everything happened while I was adjusting to a situation in which I was a student again after 20 years, or myself, also questioning my ability to be back to school at all. And am I going to make it? It's not my first language. Am I going to be able to really learn and get my degree, although this is not my first language? So many things were pretty almost scary at that time. And I'm very happy that this group is there now, and that the other people who are coming next are not going to have to go through the same. And I think this is just a wonderful initiative.
Can I just add, Carol, I know you're going to ask a question about advice for incoming parents, but since you're talking about this public school situation, can I just throw something out there for people coming in?
Yeah, sure.
So because I had the same experience of like, how do I get my kids into a school? And people in other parts of the country won't understand that you are not automatically enrolled in a public school. They will enroll you in a school, but in New York City, you could go to any school throughout the 5 boroughs, even if you live, in Manhattan proper, near Columbia, or some kids have up to a 2-hour commute, and they take public transportation to go to school every day. And so it is important that you actually do a little research into schools before you move here. However, you can't apply for school until you actually live here, which is why we moved here a month early. But I had friends who had maneuvered through the public school system, and they gave me some great advice. One is that you can look at the New York City Department of Education website, and you can look at different statistics and ratings about each of the schools. 2 is you can look at insideschools.com, and that is a nonprofit group of parents started it to write reviews about schools. And I followed this advice. I did a lot of research, and I found schools that seemed like they would be a great fit for my kids. And I started calling the parent coordinators of the schools and writing to them. And a lot of people won't talk to you at all. But we were lucky because the principal of my daughter's school did talk to me, and he talked to me for like an hour. So it's hard to find somebody that will actually talk to you, and it's almost impossible to reach anybody at the Department of Education unless you have somebody's email and some sort of connection. I left numerous phone messages on people's voicemails and stuff. So anyway, so doing some research, looking at inside schools, looking at the New York City Department of Education for elementary school age children. Katie could say whether this is true or not, but I think they're supposed to keep you in your zone, in your district, so that the commute isn't so far, but supposed to doesn't mean they will. For middle school, you're really just saying where you would like to go. But for high schools, students have to apply to get into high school in New York City. So even once you're here, 8th grade, you actually have to apply, and it is hard to get into not just the specialized schools, which are like the 8, I think, schools that have a test that you can get into them, but there are also all of these other, they are called screen schools, and they rate children based on their attendance and their grades. So there's a lot of stuff you have to do to get your kids in the school. And if anybody finds my information, they're welcome to reach out to me, because I'm happy to talk to people about how to maneuver that system. It like you talking about it, Carol, just kind of reinforced what a nightmare that was, how like that was the biggest challenge coming in here for me.
Can I weigh in about
Yeah, Katie, please go ahead.
Well, just to add, because I also am happy to talk to anybody incoming who has an elementary student. And I'm really glad that Shell mentioned that, because also coming into New York City, I've always lived in a place where you're zoned for a public school. We were personally already committed to our kids going to our zoned local public school when we came, but it's a really odd experience to have been an elementary teacher for 15 years and then bring your children who are incoming kindergartners and having no idea where they're going to be. And like, because we had to be in person, like Shell said, it was really hard to get information even from people connected to Teachers College and Bancroft and housing, because school choice exists and because you can, I think in January, elementary students can apply to other schools. They can go through G&T testing and all these other things. So all of the 5 boroughs of public schools, even at the elementary level, are open to elementary students, and many go. The schools provide assistance with transportation and things like that. And so we found out right before we arrived, really, that we were zoned for 2 schools. And it was just happenstance that I ran into someone in our building who had a child who was starting pre-K and knew just a little bit about the zone school and said, this is what you want to do. You want to talk to the parent coordinator. We went in person. We went 3 days in a row. So I'm happy to talk to someone about the process that we went through to get that information. But I would say that was also our biggest challenge, was just this blind experience of coming as a teacher to bring my children and know nothing about where they were going to be. All of that to say, we are extremely happy with their school. That's 3 blocks away. So it has all worked out very well, but that would be a challenge that was one for me, and that it would be one I'd be happy to help someone else navigate who wants, help or insight or anything.
Yeah, that is great, Katie. I am sure that all this experience that we've been gathering throughout these years with the kids at schools in different levels and that is gonna really be helpful to whoever is coming next. So we'll be there, right? We personally will be there. And it's nice that you know that whoever is coming, you're welcome to reach out because we really want to give you the support. I guess all of us have said that in a way, to give you the support that we know how necessary it is. Just because we are already, we only have 15 more minutes to go. We've started this conversation about schools, which to me was one of the biggest challenges. And the next theme is challenges. What have the challenges been? What have you found to be challenging about your experience at TC? Would you like to tell us, Kate, how it felt to you?
Yeah, just to build on what Shell and Katie are saying, I have a newborn, a 4-month-old, so I've navigated trying to get her into nursery school, which turns out you have to start planning for 6 months before they're born in order to get into a nursery school because the lines are so long. So if you are curious about how to manage those lines or what schools are out there and how that works, I'd love to talk to you, because nursery schools are extremely expensive. Ages, they'll take, oh, sorry, that's her in the background. You can find a school for a 1 and 2 year old. There is universal pre-K at the age of 3, but getting into that is a fiasco. But there is financial aid available through the city for parents who meet their income requirements for kids ages 1 and 2. So if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to me, and reach out to our group, because because I think it's very difficult to find this information, and that's what I would say would be the challenge. It's Byzantine collection of conduits you have to go through to get the information you need to find the resources that will be helpful. The biggest challenge for me was just going from office to office to office. And, I'm also trying to be a graduate student. I'm also trying to meet these deadlines. And, I'm not funded. So I had 2 jobs and sometimes 3 jobs that I was working. So, the stress of, wanting to do right for your kids and wanting to take care of them and make sure they're going to be okay, just kept falling in conflict with my existence at Teachers College. I felt like there were moments where I had to choose between, the health and safety of my kid and being a great or good student. And that just didn't seem like that aligned with Teachers College's mission. So I'm really happy we formed this group. I think one of the positive sides of this is it consolidates a lot of resources. So you don't have to wander from office to office to find the resources you need. Our group is not just a collection of parents who can serve as resources for each other, but we're also an advocacy group. And we hope to push for Teachers College to have a liaison office for parents, so that there can be someone who helps new parents coming into the city coordinate, help parents like Shell and Katie find schools and get into the schools they want to get into, because that shouldn't be our job. It shouldn't be the work of the parents to take that time away from their studies. They came to Teachers College to learn and to study, and they didn't come here to have their children get lost in the school system, particularly Teachers College, which should know how to navigate that system. I'm finished speaking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I can't tell you how much grateful I am for you guys who started this wonderful group, for all of us. And this thing that you mentioned, Kate, about advocacy is so important, because we need to be strong. As we are together, we'll grow into that direction. And it's for the benefit of ourselves, of course, but I see it as perennial benefit for anyone who's coming next after us. So this is really relevant work. Thank you again. Would you like, Katie, to share with us any of your challenges?
Oh, I think that the schooling was probably the biggest, was just figuring out how and where to go and who to talk to, and even registering for my kids' school was a challenge on the day that they registered. But then, like I said, we've really loved their school. It's one of the zone schools for Teachers College housing. So I'm happy to talk about our experience with that school too. And then I think beyond that, for me personally, it was probably just adjusting to life in a big city. I was in a big city, but it was nothing like New York City. I was in a city where we traveled by car, and we could drive to the grocery store and load up our trunk and drive home. And so just like learning new ways of getting about and moving, getting groceries. Public transit's really easy and convenient, but it's a trick to navigate it with kids and when you need, like food and things like that. So I think just having to learn that, which mostly I think comes by doing, but also by talking to people who've been here. Like I think 3 weeks in, someone told me I could find school supplies at a hardware store. I would never have thought to look at a hardware store, but they carry things, like many businesses carry things that you wouldn't expect them to carry. And so just talking to people like, where can I go to get a yellow folder? Or things like that. Just learning the ropes of being here was a challenge, but not one that I regret at all. So.
Do you feel like sharing anything more, Shell, or?
Well, I would just say, and I don't know, Carl, if you can relate, but, my kids are older, so they're not so dependent on me. And so some of the things that probably Katie and Kate are experiencing are not, well, they're just a little different. So like there was a stress for me of like getting my kids to understand how to take public transportation by themselves. That was a big new, but they were able to do it. My son took the subway to school every day and was like, please just leave me alone. And he's the 14-year-old. He was like, I can do it by myself. Don't come with me. So my kids gained a lot of independence here because of the public transportation. I've also lived in a number of cities in the US. Chicago and San Francisco are two of them. So a big city and maneuvering through a lot of this stuff didn't feel like a huge adjustment so much. So I would just say for me, one of the biggest challenges is, besides my kids being teenagers, I mean, honestly, the biggest challenge is the COVID crisis. I mean, my kids are teenagers, so they're having a lot of mental health issues, as we all are, dealing with this kind of new existence, especially in New York City. And so that's certainly the biggest challenge, and one that I'm kind of slowly trying to figure out how to tread through. But as far as school and everything goes, my biggest challenge is that I'm a perfectionist. And so I'm like constantly like trying like holding myself up to this like perfect standard. And one adjustment that I talk to my colleagues about in my program is that it doesn't matter if I get an A, really. Like an A is just a grade, and nobody's going to look at my grades unless I'm really doing poorly. And so it's been a real shift in my thinking to consider that it's not about being perfect. It's about developing my skills. And for me, I want to be a more articulate writer. I want to be able to draw on theory and research to support my methods and my ideologies. And so my education is about a process of becoming the best version of me as an academic and advocate, because I do a lot of advocacy work, that I can be, not me telling myself I have to be this or that, and it's interesting. So I am full-time. So that's another thing. There's so much reading in some of my classes to where I feel like I'm just constantly reading, and then I'm trying to annotate all of my reading, but I don't have time to do it because there's just too much reading. And then you have to like pick and choose, what do you just quickly highlight? What do you annotate? What do you save? And what, so really it's just the organizing of class material and making sure that I'm detailing enough and not over detailing, so that I'm holding on to the things that are really going to serve once I get to working on my dissertation and my case studies. That's probably the biggest challenge. And then, my director talks about imposter syndrome a lot. And I think a lot of people in graduate programs struggle with this, like, oh, how did I get here? Maybe everybody else has took the clue and I didn't, and I'm missing something big. And so that's probably been the biggest like academic struggle for me, but one that has been, amazing. I mean, it's a journey. We're all on this journey, and with its challenges come these great rewards. So I do look forward to the month of August. I have my last paper for my summer courses to turn in today, and then I will have the first break that I've had for a very long time for the month of August. I'm going to be reading lots of like nonfiction, romance, trash novels, whatever I can get my hands on that is not theory and practice.
Yeah. Congratulations, and I know you're gonna do well. Well, this is one thing that you mentioned that I think that makes all this conversation that we're about to wrap up to be relevant, it is that the feeling that I have is that all the struggles I've been through, they were totally worth it, because the amount of growth that I was able to reach, like in terms of being a human being, really, the empathy that you get, because like, you know, you see things differently when you have different experiences. So really, to leave the comfort zone, no matter how hard it is, I will always advocate that it's worth it. So, and now by having all this network of support that TC is now providing through the work of volunteers like yourselves, I think it's just amazing that the people who are coming next will have something more positive to look forward to. And maybe just so we can wrap up this conversation, something that we have accomplished during our time at TC, just really like quickly, anything that comes to your mind.
I'm on track to finish on time. That's
wonderful.
I'm excited that I've been running as much as I have. I was supposed to do the New York Marathon and it was canceled, but I am really proud of myself because I've kept my running up and I'm back up to 12 miles. And but probably actually the big accomplishment, like since we're still in the middle of our journey or maybe even the beginning, the Zenkel Fellowship. I'm really excited that I'm going to be partnering with a math doctoral student to create dance math lesson plans that teach to both sets of standards in the public school. It's something that I started looking at as a graduate student and didn't find a lot of support for. So to have been accepted for the fellowship now and to be able to work on that, I'm very proud and I'm super excited. And I know people applied that were incredibly skilled and you know, easily could have gotten the job. So that's a great accomplishment for me.
Congratulations. Very happy for you. How about you, Katie?
Oh, goodness. Well, the conference that I attended that eventually led me to Teachers College actually happened virtually a couple weeks ago. And it was very cool to get to be part of the group that was helping transfer it from a live in-person conference to a virtual space. And to sort of, I mean, it was sort of nostalgic and surreal and hope-filled to me that that work was still happening even online. So that kind of comes to mind. And then I do have a publication that I'm wrapping up for that actually started in my, like one of my very first classes, my first semester, that's sort of been on a journey. And I'm really excited. It's a resource for teachers, part of some modules on teaching the Harlem Renaissance. And it should be coming out, I think, sometime this month for the centennial of the Harlem Renaissance. And I'm just really excited about how that's grown and developed and is almost out in the world. So, yay.
That is wonderful. Great news. Well, for me, one of the things that I think that really changed my life was the fact that I saw myself a little over 1 year ago graduating from my first degree from Teachers College, the master's degree, and I saw myself there. The ceremony took place at the St. John the Divine Church on Amsterdam. It is just beautiful, and it's so full of artifacts to make all those efforts, all those nights without sleep, all those meals that you had to skip. Although you try to be healthy, you can't be healthy all the time, and things like that. It makes all those things be worth it. And I had the pleasure to have my mom, who raised us like 3 daughters by herself. So she was there. She came from Brazil to be there. And I had my husband, who had been with me all the time. He left, everything, behind in Brazil, his work, his career, everything, to be with me, to support me in that decision. And I had my 2 kids. So I was like, oh my God, I am blessed. This is really wonderful. So this, to have accomplished that, facing all the challenges made me realize, well, we should just keep fighting. Things will eventually happen. So that was it.
You're all brilliant. Thank you for this.
Yes, thank you for this moment. It's been wonderful. I hope that the ones who are watching us anytime, anywhere in the world will feel the warmth of our community of parents and caregivers, and that they all already belong, right? So just come in and feel welcome. And thank you, Alama and the Office of Graduate Student Life and Development for offering us, for having this brilliant idea of putting this up together, because I hope it will really help some people, like ease a little bit the tension in coming to our community. So I guess that's it, right? Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Hope to see you in person, right?